Okay. Thank you, Randy. I'm Marty Zeke, the Valley Metro project manager for this study. Joining me is a great panel of staff from Valley Metro, our consultant AECOM, as well as the City of Phoenix, who will be able to help answer questions later on in the meeting. As Randy had mentioned, this format for our meeting is a short presentation followed by a question and answer period. So to start out, what is an alternatives analysis? Essentially, what we're looking to do with this study is evaluate both transit types and different routes to meet future transportation needs. So I'll get into all of this in future slides, but really the main thing to distill from here is that we're looking to identify a particular type of high-capacity transit and use that to identify one route that will be brought forward for presentation to Phoenix City Council for consideration to be a locally preferred alternative. The locally preferred alternative will include the selected route, the selected transit type, as well as station planning areas. So this is not exact locations of stations for this high-capacity transit, but just looking at what would be the right spot to put high-capacity transit stations. We are conducting public outreach throughout the study. Today is the second of 3 public outreach events in this first session, and we will have 2 more sessions of outreach later on in the study. And at any time during the study, we are happy to accept any outreach and any communication from the public. So please reach out to us during this period of time, and if it's not within this period of time, please also reach out to us. And finally, the process concludes with seeking local approval of the locally preferred alternative. So, to give a quick overview of this project, what we're looking to do is improve transit in the study area, which you can see on the map in the screen. So, the area that we're looking at on the eastern edge is Central Avenue, and that's where you can see the existing light rail alignment in purple with all of those station circles marked on there. To the western edge is 99th Avenue, so right around where the 101 breaks off from the 10 and heads north towards Westgate and the Northwest Valley. To the south is McDowell Road, and that's where the new light rail extension that will be brought forward, the I-10 West extension, will run very closely to. That extension will end at Desert Sky Mall. And then finally, to the north is Camelback Road, and that is where you can see kind of at the upper bounds of that map that's embedded into this slide. So our goal here is to connect this study area with existing or planned high-capacity transit. So, looking at the process itself, what we want to make sure that we're identifying is how is this alternatives analysis conducted. Where we are right now is in level 1. And essentially what we're looking to do here is ensure that we're connecting the right places. The process itself, where we're starting out, looking at just kind of that high-level route idea, and then where it will go from there is a more detailed analysis where we'll look at both the type of transit as well as the route in that level 2 period. And then in level 3, we'll refine everything that we had gone through in levels 1 and 2 to identify the specific route and type of transit that would best serve this study area. As a part of this process, we are looking into numerous different criteria in all of the different levels. You can see down below on where it says level 1, there's a whole set of bullet points with different criteria that we are looking at to identify what we see in level 1. This will be the same in levels 2 and levels 3. And I'm not going to read through all of that right now. It is something that we have posted on our website, which is valleymetro.org/West Phoenix. That will also show up on the last slide of this presentation. So all of the materials that are being presented here, because some of these slides do have a fair amount of text as we want to convey to the public the most information that we can, will have that potential for you to look through it further after this presentation. One thing I would like to note very quickly before we move on is that you may have noticed that I'm pausing at certain times during this presentation. That is because this presentation is being simultaneously recorded in English and translated into Spanish. So, getting into the purpose and need of the study. I know on the last slide I had mentioned that I'm not necessarily going to read through all of the words on these different slides. This is one of those slides where that is very much the case. All of the information that you see in front of you here is available at that website, valleymetro.org/West Phoenix. And what I would like to do for the sake of time for this presentation and to give everyone as much time as possible to ask questions is to really just go through and distill it down what we are really seeking out here with the purpose and need for this project. So really what we're looking for with the purpose of adding high-capacity transit into this study area within West Phoenix is acknowledging that there's room to grow and that enhancing the options that people have to get around in ways other than just driving is going to be a major benefit to everyone that lives, works, and wants to get to activity centers within the West Phoenix area. We want to improve access, and we want to provide a fast, clean, and affordable alternative for people to get around. In terms of the need for this project, that's getting more into the specifics of why are we looking at this area instead of other areas within the city. And really the key here is that within Maryvale and the whole West Phoenix area, we see very high transit utilization with the existing network. The existing network is mainly comprised of local bus routes and the Mary Circulator. The couple projects that are going to be touching the area in the next period of time that are going to improve what's available are the Phoenix BRT program, which will go through this study area along 35th Avenue, and the I-10 West light rail extension, which will serve Desert Sky Mall. Those two systems are going to provide great new opportunities for people to have efficient and quick access to high-capacity transit. However, the City of Phoenix and Valley Metro acknowledge that we can do more, and that's where this study comes in. We want to put something through Maryvale that demonstrates how we can help serve this dense part of the city, both in terms of jobs and population, and show that as Maryvale continues to grow and take in more people and more jobs, that we have multiple ways for people to get around. So, I'd mentioned before that we're looking at multiple different types of transit to serve this area. The two that are being considered for this study are light rail, which this region is familiar with, as well as bus rapid transit, which is something that the city of Phoenix is implementing along Van Buren and 35th Avenue. Once that system is in place, we will have both bus rapid transit and light rail in active service within Metro Phoenix. Both of these systems provide great benefits to riders of transit, but there are some differences I'd like to quickly go through. When we look at speed, light rail tends to be a little bit faster than bus rapid transit, as on that second line down there, it runs in completely dedicated lanes. So if you look at our existing light rail system around the valley, there is nowhere on our system that cars and our light rail trains share the same lanes. With bus rapid transit, there's more flexibility in that the buses can travel on the same lanes as automobiles. That doesn't necessarily mean that they will. There is the potential to have the dedicated lanes for bus rapid transit, but it's not necessary in the same way that it is for light rail. In terms of cost, light rail is more expensive to build upfront than bus rapid transit. However, it tends to be a little bit less expensive to operate in the long term compared to bus rapid transit. And finally, the capacity on a light rail system is typically higher than it would be on a bus rapid transit system. But what we really need to figure out, and what a lot of this study is going to be looking into, is how can we determine what technology would best serve the needs and the travel demand for riders in the West Phoenix study area. So, what routes are being considered? As you can see on this map, we have 10 potential options that have been identified from the outset that we are looking to study. I will talk through each of these lines, but not on this slide. We have split it out into much easier ways to look at these individual lines. And at any point after the presentation in the questions and answers, if you have questions about some of these alternatives, I am more than happy to answer. So the first three lines on the map that you can see here, options 1, 2, and 3, what they share in common is that they all start out at the 19th Avenue and Camelback light rail line. They then extend west, turning south at different points. The green line, so that's option 2, runs along Camelback furthest to the west, turning south at 59th Avenue. The pink line runs west along Camelback and turns south to hit Maryvale Parkway and the different services that are along that corridor. And the purple line turns south along 27th Avenue. These three options will have the potential to serve many different activity centers throughout this corridor. However, the one thing to note is that these routes would have the necessitation to require participation from neighboring communities, as Camelback is the border between Phoenix and other cities. Two more quick things to point out on this map that remain constant throughout the rest of the maps that you will see in this presentation. At 79th Avenue and Thomas Road is a purple dot. That is the Desert Sky Transit Center and the planned end of line for the I-10 West extension of the light rail system. One of the goals of this project is to ensure that there is a great connection between this alignment and the I-10 West extension. The other piece to note is that there is kind of that hatched blue and green line running west along Thomas Road from where that purple dot is to 91st Avenue. What we are trying to show here is that there is a lot of activity and a lot of growth happening at the intersection of Thomas Road and 91st Avenue, where the hospital system is growing in full force. We want to make sure, as we do this study, that we are looking at the potential to serve those activity centers, but that we also acknowledge that a good potential end of line for this project could be that meeting point with the I-10 West extension at the Desert Sky Mall. Next slide, please. So the next set of options, these are the routes that primarily are identified to run along Indian School Road. A couple things to note here. On the far eastern edge of the map, so that's on the east side of I-17 along the 19th Avenue corridor as it then goes to Central Avenue, there are, in a similar way to that western edge, those two potential alternatives as to how we would connect the West Phoenix project into the existing high-capacity transit network. The first of which, similar to the lines shown on the last slide, would connect down along 19th Avenue to Indian School from the 19th Avenue and Camelback Light Rail Station. The other alternative is to start this project out and have a connection with the Indian School and Central Avenue Light Rail Station. Indian School Road is a major thoroughfare in this region of Phoenix and sees a lot of different activity centers, including shopping, churches, high-density residential, as well as numerous event spaces, and some of the major activity centers within Metro Phoenix itself. Namely American Family Field, just at the 51st Avenue and Indian School intersection. So all three of these routes would give people the potential to take transit to spring training. Next slide, please. The next set of options are the ones that run primarily along Thomas Road. Similar to Indian School Road, the Thomas Road corridor has quite a bit of activity and high-density residential along it, so we feel it is prudent to study the potential to put high-capacity transit along this route. And then finally, the last two options that are being shown are those that run along McDowell Road. Similar to all of the other options that we saw here, they end at the 79th Avenue and Thomas Road area, where we are looking at a connection to other transit at the Desert Sky Mall Transit Center. One thing I will note with these alternatives, however, is that they are very close in proximity to the I-10 West extension. And as we go through the analysis of going from that first map that you saw of 10 lines down to one line that we will advance for consideration by council, considerations such as proximity to other high-capacity transit investments will be taken into account. So, as we move ahead with this process, how are we evaluating these routes? In no particular order, I will talk quickly through the things that you see on this screen. Ridership potential is crucial. We want to make sure that where we put a high-capacity transit investment, it's in an area that people will ride it. We also want to look into what we call here physical and engineering constraints. And essentially what that means is if for whatever reason a certain route just will not work based on the conditions on the ground as well as just is it possible to even do it there, we want to identify that early on and take out any potential options that just won't work. Preliminary cost estimates. Essentially what we're looking at here is just making sure that it pencils out and that we are using taxpayer resources in the most prudent and financially responsible way possible. Community characteristics. Essentially what we're looking at here is, are we serving areas that have growth potential and where the communities are strong candidates for high-capacity transit. An example of a community that would not necessarily be the best to put in this mode of transit is a heavily industrial area, as there just wouldn't be that many places for people to walk to. Community input is vitally important to this process. We at Valley Metro have access to looking into data as well as many different ways to identify what potential routes could be, but getting input from the community is top priority for us to make sure that we're not only doing something that makes sense on the data, but also is something that the community is supportive of and is excited about. And finally, I'm going to talk through the last two of these together. So that's land use and economic development potential, as well as compatibility with existing and planned transportation network. What we're looking at here is essentially, are we identifying potential options for high-capacity transit in places that make sense? Are there abilities to grow and bring new uses into spaces, as well as are we looking at areas where people can access transit? If there's a high density development coming in, but there are no sidewalks around it, as an example, that's not something that necessarily would give people the easy ability to walk to high capacity transit. So, to sum up and go on to the next question and answer portion of this meeting, just quickly I'm going to run through some next steps as well as a timeline. Where we're at now, as you saw on the maps, we are in the process of identifying potential route alternatives to study further. From there, we will evaluate the different route alternatives using many of the different factors that have been identified so far to figure out what makes sense and what frankly just doesn't make sense. At the same time, we'll be looking at those two different modes of high capacity transit, so that's light rail and bus rapid transit, to see what makes, again, the most sense, what best fits the needs as well as what we can really produce that will be a high quality product for West Phoenix. We also want to evaluate potential local bus enhancements. Just putting high capacity transit in somewhere doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be successful. We want to ensure that there is ample opportunity for people who don't necessarily live or work right along this line, that they can still use it and still benefit from it. And the main way to do that is to look at the local bus that's interlining with this network and crossing it, so we're providing the best possible connections for people to transfer between this system as well as the local bus network. And finally, throughout this process, we look to review these results from this evaluation with stakeholders in the public. So really quickly to go through the timeline, we started out defining the purpose and need for the project. Right now, we're in the stage of identifying alternatives. By the summer and fall, we'll be actually evaluating the different alternatives to, by fall 2023, so fall of this year, have a preferred alternative defined. And then in the fall and in the winter, we will go through the locally preferred alternative adoption process, where we will present the preferred alternative for consideration by Phoenix City Council. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Randy to tell everyone how they can ask questions and provide their comments this evening.
Thank you, Marty. We'll now begin the question and answer portion of tonight's meeting. You may ask a question a few different ways. To verbally make a statement or ask a question, we ask that you please virtually raise your hand. Here's how to do that. For those of you using WebEx through your internet browser, mobile phone app, or your WebEx desktop app, simply follow the instructions on the screen. If you would like to ask your question or make a statement, you can click the raised hand icon. When you are called, the moderator will ask to unmute your microphone. When you're finished, the moderator will mute your line, and we ask that you lower your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon again. For those joining us online, these WebEx instructions are showing on your screen. If you are joining by phone as a call-in participant, please press *3 if you would like to ask a question or make a comment. This gives us a hand raised signal. When it's your turn to speak, we'll call on you and ask you to unmute your line. Press *6 to unmute, and then you may begin speaking. When you finish speaking, press *3 again to remove the hand raised signal. If you've joined us using one of the WebEx applications, you may also choose to submit your question or comment in writing using the WebEx Q&A feature. These instructions are displayed on the screen. Remember, if you are joining by phone as a call-in participant, press *3 if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. This gives us the hand raised signal. When it's your turn to speak, we'll call on you and ask you to unmute your line. You can press *6 to unmute and then begin speaking. And a reminder, if you're having any technical issues, please contact WebEx Help at 866-229-3239. We will do our best to respond to questions in the order they are received. And now we'll begin answering your questions. Again, if you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand.
This is the interpreter speaking. You went way too fast. I was not able to keep up.
Okay,
I left off where you were right at the beginning, where you were explaining the internet browser and the WebEx.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Do we want to go back over that portion or speak to them offline? I mean, if you're not able to get the information to the individual, I mean, we need to make sure that everyone has the information so they can comment.
Don't worry, Marcus, we'll handle that on the Spanish side.
Okay.
We'll stay around for a few minutes in case any of our attendees have any questions that they'd like to have answered. We'll just run through the instructions again if you would like to ask a question. If you're on the WebEx app, please click the raised hand icon. That'll raise your hand, and then we can call on you and ask you to unmute your line. Or if you'd like to ask a question in the Q&A box, you can click on the Q&A in the bottom right corner. It's a little question mark in a box. And you can type your question in there, and we will answer it verbally. Thank you. And we'll stay on the line for another few minutes if anybody has any questions.
All right, well, this whole team appreciates everyone's attendance at this webinar, and we hope that this information was meaningful and got you excited about the potential for high-capacity transit in the West Phoenix area. Before we adjourn this meeting, I'd like to remind that this presentation has been recorded and will be posted to the project website at valleymetro.org/westphoenix. We encourage you to visit the website for more information and to sign up to be placed on the mailing list. We also have an online comment form where you can provide your feedback about what you saw this evening. We will put the link to the survey in the chat box, or you can scan the QR code that you can see on the screen. Also, we will be holding another in-person public meeting this Saturday, March 18th, from 10 a.m. until noon at the Maryvale Community Center. We invite you to attend and that any remaining questions you may have, we will answer them. Okay, well, thank you very much for your interest in this project and your participation. Have a great evening.